Wes du har min friend and welcome to yet another video, and we've got yet another review of the House of the Dragon. This time it's episode 6, and yes, once again they have delivered. HBO has delivered, and this particular adaptation is very good indeed. It seems to me that the showrunners and the screenwriters really have been taking notes after the not really huge popularity of the 8th season of Game of Thrones. They are learning from their mistakes. Now, of course, once again, one has to compare this show with the other fantasy show that is being at the other streaming platform, at Amazon Prime, and we are talking The Rings of Prime, the abhorrent Amazon's original story that is labeling the name on it of Professor Tolkien. But here we are talking about House of the Dragon. Now, of course, because I'm a huge literature fan, and I am always a fan of the source material and always go for the book before I want to enjoy some adaptation of it, I shall start with a comparison of this particular episode with what happened in the books. I noticed a couple of changes, but of course this does not mean that I am criticizing the show. Overall, I have to say that I have been pleasantly surprised by House of the Dragon, and I have been enjoying it indeed. And there you can see that even a literature purist such as myself can enjoy an adaptation when it is done correctly. Now, of course, the main changes that have been done that I noticed mainly were revolving around the protagonists. So, for example, at the beginning, by the way, before I start, I have to say there are going to be spoilers, major spoilers, both as far as the show and as far as the books. So if you don't want the books or the show to be spoiled for you, go and watch the show, read the books, and then come back. All right, so at the beginning, Renra, well, this is the greatest thing that I'm really dissatisfied with. Before I start, there is one problem that I've got with the show as of now, and that is, of course, they had to make this time jump, the time shift way into the future, like 10 years, which is much bigger time jump than they did in the previous episodes. And this means that they changed 2 actresses. So Renra and Alicent are not being portrayed by the actresses that they were up until now. They're different actresses, older actresses, and I don't like it, because I love the actress who portrayed Renra Targaryen up until now, and it will be very tough to be getting used to this new actress. I absolutely adore the previous actress, and for me she will forever be Renra Targaryen. So the changes, so when she's giving birth to her son, Leonor Valerian had to be summoned, but in the book there was just this was done a bit differently. He was present during the childbirth, as well as Sir Harwin. So both of them, both her husband and the actual father of her children were there, but it was just a minor change there. There was, of course, some characters missing. For example, one of Alicent's sons were missing, Daeron Targaryen. So we see all the children and grandchildren and the children of Renra and the children of Alicent being training together and being in the dragon pit, where one of them is being made fun of. And that's where I noticed that Daeron Targaryen was missing. But it is, once again, just a minor change, and he might appear in some future episodes. Now, there is this one thing that's very funny about this adaptation, and that is when we get to the bastards, to the sons of Renra Targaryen. And they're, of course, they look quite differently from your regular Targaryens. They don't have white hair. They've got brown hair. But, of course, when Alicent brings it up before Viserys Targaryen, he doesn't want to believe it. And in the books, he had more reasons to disbelieve, if I remember correctly, this particular fact. Because, of course, their grandmother had brown hair, and in the books, Renra's Targaryen's husband, Lanor Valerian, of course, looked differently from how he looks in the show as far as the color of his skin goes. So if you look at the children of Renra Targaryen in the show, and if you look at Lanor Valerian, it is much easier to recognize that they are not his children at all, because they would have looked a bit differently. But you know, that's it seems to me that today, in today's society and the entertainment industry, and caused by the quota they have in Hollywood, we have to suspend our disbelief even more than we had to in the past, don't we? Well, it was just something that amused me a little bit. Abandon the evidence of your own eyes and ears, as my dear George said. All right, then. Then as far as the struggle between Sir Harwin and Kristen Cole, well, they did not engage in a brutal fight like they did in this particular episode. Harwin basically beat the hell out of Cole in the episode, and that resulted in him being expelled from the court. Well, that didn't really happen in the books. In the books, Renra didn't really want Kristen Cole to train her children. You know, she just wouldn't. She just wouldn't do that. And so there was, I think, the Master at Arms who trained her kids, and but he was expelled in the end, Sir Harwin. But that was only after an event that happened among the children, and during which Aemon lost one of his eyes. So he was expelled, but much later and under different circumstances. And that, of course, means that his father, Lionel Strong, he never tried to resign from his post. So there was also a change that they did. It seems to me that they are trying to make many characters more likable than they were in the books, which is quite understandable, since you make a show for a wider audience. So I think that it's quite logical to try to make as many characters as possible, as likable as possible for the wide audience. Now, the biggest nonsense that I saw in this episode, and that is the second thing that I didn't really like, apart from the change of the actress of Renra Targaryen, is when Daemon's Targaryen's son was about to be born, and of course the son wouldn't go out. He was stuck inside, you know, his mother. So she went out, and she, well, made a huge trip, very, very long trip, for how much in pain she was. And then she went to her dragon and said Dracarys, and the dragon burned her, which doesn't make any sense in the first place. And secondly, it didn't really happen in the book. The son was born, however, he was disfigured very much, and passed away later. And he was followed then by his mother. And so that was a change that I was quite confused about. But I suppose they wanted to make it more dramatic. Because, you know, a lot of characters in the books, they pass away from natural reasons. You know, naturally, or more naturally, or less brutally than in the show. So I think they advertised this show that they are going to try to introduce less brutality into the show, but so far it seems to me that they are introducing more of it. And of course they are never forgetting to show us how much of a nuisance it is to be a woman in a medieval feudal society, especially in the medieval feudal fantasy society. We know HBO, we know what you're trying to do. But other than that, I'm going to stop now talking about the changes that were done from the books to the screen. And other than that, I'm going to say that the 6th episode, I think, is so far the best one as far as the pace goes. The pace is much quicker than in the previous episodes. And a lot of events happen that will then now inevitably move the story forward. I especially then enjoyed all the schemes and plots and intricacies that are, of course, very natural in the court. And then there was, of course, Larry Strong, who really takes the place of Varys from the Game of Thrones, although it wasn't really that much apparent or clear who or whose fault it was, the burning of Harrenhal, I mean, and then, of course, the inevitable passing away of Sir Harwin and his father, but, so here they decided to make it a little bit more clear. But of course, it is much better here to show things a bit more in detail and clearly, because after all, the source material is more of a chronicle-like book that is being told by very often unreliable narrators. So these changes are quite understandable. You couldn't really make the book into the show as it was written. You had to change a lot of things. Other than that, I was paying attention to things that I thought would please the wide audience, people who have never read the books. And I thought, yes, well, you are doing this for logical reasons, obviously. So, for example, one of the main things that already we noticed in the 2nd episode is the main title, the opening titles, where there is, of course, the already worldwide famous main theme by Ramin Djawadi. And they could have done it differently. They could have composed a different main theme, but why would they? People love Game of Thrones. This is from the Game of Thrones world universe. And of course, they would want to, HBO would want the wide audience, and especially those people who enjoyed the Game of Thrones, to form a bond with this show as well. So apart from it being really done very well, I mean, as far as the cinematography goes and the pacing and the special effects, these little things that point to the Game of Thrones, that refer to bits and pieces. I love them and enjoy them, and they are not overdoing it. The member berries and the quote-unquote nostalgia baits. Is it really nostalgia when Game of Thrones isn't that old? Well, the books are. I mean, well, not really. Not really. I mean, the first... when did the first Game of Thrones book, or A Song of Ice and Fire, come out? 1995? Well, anyway, you know what I mean. And the last thing I want to focus on here is how good the show looks. Now, once again, you have to compare it with the Rings of Power. That, of course, is abhorrent. And it even looks bad. And The Rings of Power is a bad show even on its own, even if we look past the fact that it's got nothing to do with the lore, with what Professor Tolkien wrote. Well, this show looks absolutely fantastic. There were some more dragons shown in this episode, which I enjoyed. It's always nice to see some dragons in a show that is called House of the Dragon, isn't it? And other than that, if you look at the costumes, if you look at the armor, it looks good. It looks as good as it looked in the Game of Thrones. And if you compare it to the other fantasy show, and you look at the other fantasy show and everything looks plastic and weird and old and cheap, you immediately have to give the credit, give the more points to this show. So, all in all, I really did enjoy the 6th episode of House of the Dragon. The changes that I pointed out that were made from books to the screen, I pointed out only because I'm a book fan. and I always have to compare the source material with the adaptation. Is just my thing. But other than that, looking at the episode as a standalone episode in a standalone TV show, it was fantastic. I enjoyed it, and I've got nothing to say other than this. All right, let me know in the comments down below what you think, my friends. And that will be all. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm out of here.